Thank you for auditing the Always Positive new music review show hosted by a French professor who just got back from a walk. I was wearing a hat, so if I look like Frankenstein, I haven't had a lobotomy. I was just wearing a nice hat on a sunny day. I'm going to be reviewing the new EP by Hippo Campus, Good Dog, Bad Dream. And before I get to the provocative question that I'm going to use to frame this whole review, I want to talk a little bit about my history with Hippo Campus. Some of you have been with me ever since my first Hippo Campus review. And that was in the first month of having this channel. And my review of the album Bambi, back there, was my first one that ever got over 50 views. And I was just intoxicated, and it's a long process getting fans and getting viewers and all that. So they were a really important thing for me feeling like this channel might take off or might be some success. But more importantly, they were proof of concept, which was that I was trying to challenge myself as somebody in their early 40s, I'll come back to that, someone in their early 40s who had let go of new music. And the idea that I could listen to a bunch of millennial Zoomers making rock and roll and recognize it as being as good as anything I listened to when I was a 20-year-old, 25-year-old, it was a proof that that was true, that there really is good music being made out there. You just have to look for it and keep looking. So I bought the album, I listened to it all the time with my family, I went to 2 concerts, I reviewed everything they've done, and you can see it in the playlist. I'll put a playlist up there, my Hippo Campus playlist. So they're one of my little pet bands that I love, which is why you might think I'm being a little bit provocative or perhaps even unkind with my central question for this review: has Hippo Campus lost their minds? I think that is a central question which they themselves are asking on this album. Certainly there is a line in one of the songs in which the singer says, "Think I'm going to lose my mind," okay? And definitely on the first listen, I was driving with my wife and my daughter, and both of them are Hippo Campus fans. They both went to the concerts with me. And my wife just said, "Have they lost their mind?" Just hearing the first song and just hearing how different it is and just sort of how unsettling it is, that's really the question to ask. And my response, as a true academic response, will be unsatisfying. Have Hippo Campus lost their minds? Yes and no. I would say yes, certainly lyrically. They are showing that they are really sort of cracking under the pressure of almost making it, of almost being famous. They appear to be cracking under the pressure of moving from young adulthood to adulthood. They are going through a tough time, apparently, because a dog died. And, my dogs are a big part of this channel, Bo and Toby. We'll see if I can get them on at the end of the video. But that seems to be a big part of this, just being really sad that a dog died. One of the primary lead singer, Jake, who sings 4 of the 6 songs here, also seems to be trying to deal with aging, with becoming an adult as opposed to a young adult, and he's struggling terribly with addiction to cigarettes, okay? So when I was a young adult, I also struggled with addiction to cigarettes. That was my primary vice, and I know what it's like. And it is sort of an interesting thing because even though it feels like they might have lost their minds, it feels safe. I don't worry for them. These lyrics don't make me feel like I'm listening to somebody who's about to lose it, it wasn't like listening to In Utero back in when that came out in the 90s, where I was like, yo, these people are some trouble. Or listening to Jesus, thinking, whoa, this guy's in trouble. What I hear here is a fairly stable group of people who are having a tough time and getting through that tough time lyrically and musically on album. That's what I think they're doing. So yes, they have lost their mind lyrically, and I'll get more into detail as the video goes on. But musically, I'm going to challenge you, I'm pointing to you, Hippo Campus fan, who's been listening to this album and trying to figure out what the hell just happened. No, they have not lost their mind. I am lucky because I didn't start with their first album, Landmark. That came out while I was still musically asleep, before Rip Van Winkle woke up and listened to new music. So my introduction to them was Bambi. And that album is very adventurous, musically adventurous, stylistically adventurous. It's a total break from their first album, at least in terms of its not just trying to be an indie rock album, right? It's just trying to be a much more ambitious album. And I would say, and I mean this in a polite way, but if you don't like Good Dog, Bad Dream, you probably don't like Hippo Campus. Now that sounds like I'm gatekeeping, right? And what am I? You know, I don't even listen to their solo albums. Okay, they put out like an album every week as a solo group. So when I say I'm a Hippo Campus fan, I don't mean like I'm a fan of the lore and I visited all the places in Minnesota where they live. I don't know who's dating whom or whatever, or who's gay, if they're all gay and none of them are gay. I don't care about any of that stuff, right? So I'm just talking about just the band, Hippo Campus, who has released a couple LPs, a couple EPs. That band, you might not like that band if you don't like this. Because it's very clear in the passage from this album to that album that they need Radiohead-style fans. Fans who are down for Hippo Campus. Not down for the way that they felt when they heard the first album. Not down for the way that the first album connected and they made this. You're supposed to be there for them. And as viewers of this channel will know, that's my favorite kind of artist. They're not here for me. I'm here for them. It is my responsibility to understand what they're doing and to respect it and to give it a real chance and to see that it's actually not that big of a shift. It really isn't. It's brave, it's unsettling, but fundamentally, it is the same. So I would say, if you don't like this album, first off, and you do like Hippo Campus, then just acknowledge that you will probably like it eventually. The same way that you came to like Bambi. The same way that I, the first time listening to Kid A, heard National Anthem and was like, finally, a good song on this album. And then it went right back to the bleeps and bloops, and I was like, these guys have lost it. They used to be good. I saw them at the Paradise in 1995, and they played with the Bends, and that was Radiohead was good. When I said that, I wasn't a real Radiohead fan. Fortunately, I corrected myself and came to love Amnesiac even more. The thing I think that makes this EP both fascinating and quite challenging is it feels like every song is totally different, one to the next. Now, they all possess Hippo Campus's excellent musicianship. That's the thing that really blew my mind seeing them in concert. Again, with a Radiohead analogy, but a band where they know each other, they care for each other, and the way that they play together matters. The fact that every member plays the way they play really does matter, and that comes through. My main beef with this whole album is their drummer, whose father watches all my videos. How's it going? I love the drummer, Whistler. I forget his last name, but I love his drumming. I think he is one of the best drummers right now, period, just in rock and roll. And he's a little bit not enough on this album. The beats sound a little too electronic. I think maybe sometimes there's even a drum machine or a loop going on here. And he's getting a little bit, going back to the Radiohead analogy, he's getting a little bit cell-weight, you know, like the band's growing and evolving and trying different styles, which unfortunately mean that there's a little bit less drums. But still, there's enough drums on here that I'm happy. There's enough of these great production details all the way throughout that you just, so I talk about different ways of listening to this album. Listening on headphones is great because you pick up all these great production details. But it also is a roll down your windows while driving back from the gym this morning and cranking up your stereo and blasting the song with your hand out the window like you're so tired and hot that you can't even have your hand up like this in a window. Like you have your hand down like that. That's how I was driving right now, blasting Hippo Campus all the way through suburban Rochester. Okay, so it does really well on both of those fronts. I went on a tangent. I'm a teacher. I can do that. So it seems to me that it has all of these elements that are great and kind of standard. But the thing that makes this album so dense and so rich is every song is so different. And I would say that they each feel like they are spiritually co-produced. Now, the whole thing is produced by, I forget the name of the guy. You can put it in the comments if you want. By someone who produces their albums. He does a great job. But each song feels so distinctly in a different style that I'm going to put forth imaginary co-producers. And we'll start with the opening track, which is Bad Dream Baby. Okay? This is also going to be my homework. Every album, I give you an example of what the album sounds like. It's hard to do with this album. Each song is so different. But follow the link up there to watch and listen to the song Bad Dream Baby. Now, this song, I believe, is spiritually co-produced by Oingo Boingo. Okay, Danny Elfman, the guy who did the Batman theme and the Simpsons theme. He had an LA band before working with Tim Burton on Pee-wee's Big Adventure and becoming a great soundtrack artist. And the way that this song sounds, it has this weird kind of funkiness to it. It has kind of an LA 80s catchy feel, but especially the way that it's sung, it sounds a lot like Danny Elfman singing. And I love Oingo Boingo. Now, I know I only have a best of here. That's because all my Oingo Boingo stuff is on cassette. I actually knew a weirdo in college. He was a nice guy, but he gave me like an entire bag of Oingo Boingo cassettes once. Very weird guy. Anyways, so it has that cool 80s feel. It starts with like these bloops and very strong Whistler drum beat, and then there's just this insanely catchy lead guitar line that I think matched with the synthesizer. Almost like an Asiatic scale, and it's just a very catchy, fun song. Now I need to tell you, the Dr. and Mrs., my wife, she's not buying it. We listened to the song on repeat. We were doing Raid Hour in Pokemon Go. We were listening to it on repeat, and she's just like, I don't like this song. I don't think I like this album. I'm sorry, I like Hippo Campus, but I don't think I like this. All right, so it's very clearly a very upsetting album. Could also be that my wife loves dogs. And the entire first verse of this song is basically about this guy's dog dying. I did a little bit of research. He did have a dog named Cookie. Great name for a dog. And we are in a weird moment. Okay, so I've been talking a lot on this channel about mothers in pop and rap, especially in rap music right now. There's also a dog moment happening, okay? Clairo, her album is mostly dedicated to her dog. Fiona Apple, Fetch the Bolt Cutters. As you know, my daughter thought that the dog's name was Cutters, and it was a command, fetch the bolt, comma, Cutters. And more specifically, you see in the back there, Japanese Breakfast. Japanese Breakfast has a song called In Hell on her great album, and that whole song is about her dog dying. We have 2 songs in the span of a few months where young adults who are struggling with the passage to adulthood are coping with the loss of a dog. This is not just like some weird funny fact. This is an important thing. Dogs can represent a real attachment and a real connection to love. They are often used as replacements for children. Instead of having children, you have a dog. Or like as you think you might want to have children, you see how you are with the dog, you know, or a cat, but dogs are better in every single way, superior to cats in every single imaginable way. But, you know, hit me up in the comments if you disagree. I'll get some engagement now. But this idea that like the dog dying, it's not just a dog dying. It is a true thing. A lot of people have to deal with their childhood dogs dying in their early 20s. It happens all the time. I teach college, and it's just a fact. There's just going to be, you know, if I have a class of like 20 kids, 2 or 3 of them are going to have dogs die throughout the semester. It's just like when people get dogs and when they die and their age. So it's a very odd beginning to have this verse. And this is part of the reason why it comes across as so crazy, because he's like, I'm going to buy you a balloon and some chocolates, and I hope your Valentine's Day was good because my dog just died. It's like, whoa, it's not too much information, but there's a disconnect in the way that these lyrics go. Like, what is the actual connection between Valentine's Day and a dog dying? Like, there isn't really one. And then he tags it with explaining how the dog was bought for him because his parents got divorced. So all of a sudden, you're sitting there and you're like, okay, Valentine's Day, okay, dog's dying, that's sad. Divorce, oh, okay, so this was like a try to make up for a divorce. Then a whole other concept of what this song is about comes in, and then he says that the dog liked his mom better anyway, which then makes you understand that the dog was associated with his mom, which means probably his mom was taking more of the nurturing role in the post-divorce. All this information is communicated with this weird instrumentation that sounds a little like Oingo Boingo, that sounds even slightly hyper-poppy. I'm going to come back to that, the genre of hyper-pop with very distorted, aggressive vocals happening a lot here. And then he gets into the chorus, this very kind of hyper-poppy sounding chorus. I'm in bed with the devil and I kind of need a drink. I'm a bad dream baby and I'll never go away. Like, and there's all these cool like notes going all over the place. And it's like, so he's a bad dream. So it's this weird song where he's talking about himself and about not being good and about these dreams, about this dog. And then we get to the What does that sound? Weird. I hope that sound stops. Okay. So then we get to the second verse. And I'm just going to read you the entire second verse because it actually really shows the controlled insanity of the lyrics on this album. At least the Jake lyrics on this album. I'm worried about Britney Spears. it's pretty effed up how her dad runs her life. I wish my dad was more involved in mine, but not really like that, yeah. So like this fascinating idea, remember how I just said the whole thing that the dog's with the mom, that's an indication of it being more nurturing with the mom than it is with the dad? Here's the proof right here in these lyrics where he's talking about like sort of wishing I have some people painting in the basement and they decided to knock on the door inside my house that leads from the basement to the kitchen. So it makes sense the dogs were upset. I'm gonna leave it in though, because the dogs have to be a star of this video. Enjoy your dogs while they're alive could also be another subtitle to this album. So the idea that the dad is disappointing or is not as nurturing and was seen after the divorce is actually implied in this weird like reference to Britney Spears, where on some level he wishes as though his dad were more like Britney Spears' dad. I will say, and this could just be Freudian listening, the way that he says, I wish my dad was like that, I thought he was saying, I wish my daughter was like that. But obviously he doesn't have kids, or else he wouldn't be so upset about his dog. He then goes on in the same verse and completely changes, and this is why I think the album sounds a little bit crazy, is that it's like, he immediately changes track. My girlfriend is at Coco's house. She's basically the nicest person. It's like, why is he talking about his girlfriend and Coco's house? Who's Coco? I'm not a hippo stan or a hippopotamus or whatever people call themselves who are big fans of the band. So I don't know. And then he says, I really wish I could be like that, but I'm not like that. And it's this whole concept of that goes throughout the entire album of him being disappointed with who he is, feeling as though he's losing control. And then we get to this bridge where we talk about him losing it, like just like going absolutely wild. I just smoked a whole pack of Parliaments. And if you're not like a weird preppy from the 90s, you might not even know what Parliaments are. Parliaments are a brand of cigarettes with like a plastic in the filter. It's a very weird shtick that they have. But this is the image of him really losing his mind. And it's not, fortunately, it's not heroin or cocaine or, you know, cheating on his girlfriend. It's just smoking a lot of cigarettes. I want to go back to partying even though I'm old. And then finally, the last verse is about his dog hopefully being in heaven, like playing with all the dog friends and kind of this concept. I think it's not just a random thing. I think it's a real concept of innocence and loss of innocence and what a dog represents. And I think, I might be going too far, but that he's taking it a little bit easier on himself with the concept that a dog can go to heaven, so theoretically, could he? I don't know. But that is the emotionally exhausting, musically exhausting, and the whole time the drumming's going great, lots of great vocal production, lots of great musical production all the way through. It's kind of an exhausting song. Then we get to the song Deep Fake, which has another different, I would say, co-producer. And this one's a little bit more of a stretch, but the way that this is sung, and this is sung by a different member of the band, Nathan, reminds me a little bit of They Might Be Giants. A little bit, not too much, but a little bit in the kind of like nerdy knowingness of this song. Another song about aging and getting older. And I want to make another theory about this album. Sort of a larger theory. Part of the reason why I had a hard time getting into this band initially was that I'm a Generation Xer, and these guys are so millennial. They're just so millennial. They're just so earnest and hopeful and, just multi-everything and just, and just they don't seem disaffected at all. They just seem earnest and bright and young and happy and dip-a-doo. And I'm sitting here growing up, still mourning the death of Kurt Cobain and drinking my OK soda and just being disaffected, right? I think this album, to a certain extent, you could see as an aging process, but it's like the millennials of these two albums are becoming Generation Xers. Like they're becoming jaded. They're becoming unsure of their own authenticity, which is the hallmark of Generation X. It's not so much that we're disaffected, it's that we doubt that we are sincere. We doubt that we are the real thing. I argue the reason why Kurt Cobain killed himself was just to do something where no one could say he was a poser. Although actually, I think that was the most poser thing that he did. Maybe that'll get some reaction in the comments, but I think it's true. So this crisis of authenticity is right here. He starts right off, I thought I was cool, but it turns out I was fake. That is such an Xer thought, right? Then we have this weird bit of the chorus where he says, do as many drugs as you can. And as people on this channel know, I'm against drugs. I'm a no drug guy, except for caffeine. But like, It's sort of a different thing. I don't think he's actually saying it fully straight. I think he's saying it somewhat ironically and just being about the idea that like youth is going away and so you just have to do it. So between like I want to go back to partying because I think although I'm old in the previous song and in this song, we really have this difficult passage of young adulthood to adulthood, which is something I've been observing a lot in rock and indie pop music, right? Like that's what so many albums have been about recently. Beautiful instrumental post-chorus on this song, which is just another kind of great reminder of what a great band they are. And I can just imagine seeing this song in concert and not having to be sort of shocked and confused by the instrumentation. The verse 2 has a second verse. As I said the verse 2, I realized I meant to say the second verse, but then I ended up saying the verse 2 has a second verse. The second verse has one of my favorite lines. Time is of the essence, but the essence is abstract. Just kind of a funny line. And then he talks about how he feels like he isn't as rad as he thought it would be and that Disney lied to him. This is essentially a rephrasing of the great Brad Pitt speech about how we were lied to as young white men, that we were going to be rock stars and movie stars, but you're not. You're just gonna buy IKEA furniture, man. Right? Like the famous preposterous / completely how I totally felt in the late 90s, like I had actual problems, which I didn't, but I thought I did. This concept that like I thought I was going to be rad, but Disney lied to me. That's really what it is. And maybe this is a different thing. Maybe this is actually more of a millennial thing, with the consequences of the idea that everyone is special, that everybody is the coolest. Maybe being disillusioned. I don't know. And I would say, if you're watching this, and you're watching it because you like me and because you like Hippo Campus, but you still think this album is garbage, listen closely to the production on the second verse. Just focus, second verse of the song Deep Fake, just the subtle dynamics that are going on here, the way the drums are manipulated. There's so many great little details. This might be as well produced as Bambi. It's just so great. Then we have this bridge kind of outro thing where someone says, you're great, you're really on a roll, I want to be like you when I'm older. I would just say this. You will hear I want to be like you when you're older a lot. And I'm saying this to my mostly under the age of 34 audience. You're going to hear this a lot. First of all, not everybody hears this. If you hear this, don't take it as an insult, take it as a compliment. And I get it all the time, in the comments, because I'm like some old dude talking about new music. You just learn to take it as a compliment, because it just means that you lived a life and you are at a certain point and you're at an admirable point. I would also say to everybody who's in their 30s, it gets better. 40s are way better than 30s. 30s, you're still mixed up with youth and are you young and all of this stuff. 40s are great. I had a terrible time in my 30s. It was great, raising kids and all that stuff. That part was good. The rest of it, though, psychologically is a mess. 40s is really where it's at. At the end of this song, they all kind of goof around by saying "you're" over and over again. And it's like studio blabber, which I think indicates a real fun part of this album, which is that they are still friends, they are still making music, even though it's kind of weird and sad. The third track, Sex Tape, I'm not going to include, I don't have an album of the person it sounds like it's co-produced, because this is going to sound like an insult. This feels like it was co-produced by Sugar Ray. I just wanna fly, them from the 90s. This is like a weirdly 90s California pop song with like a doubled voice, a little more hyper pop as well. I sort of hated this song the first time, but when I was driving back from the YMCA through suburban Rochester with my arm down like this, not up like that, my arm down like this and driving, this was the song I was happiest to be just blasting and listening. There's a lot of specific references in here. This feels like there's a lot of hometown stuff being worked through here. A very specific reference to the movie Fight Club. I was onto something. And we're talking about this drive-in theater that is, I looked it up, in Lake Elmo, Minnesota. Did you know there's a Lake Elmo? I didn't know that. It's pretty funny. And then this just weird chorus that's like, keeps talking about his sex tape and how it's going to be filmed and how his sex tape will win Sundance. That was auto-corrected. and I want to show you how that was auto-corrected here. Sexy Ape will some canceled. So yeah, the sex tape will win at Sundance. Kind of a weird line, I don't quite get it. And then there's an entire verse just about some dude that he knows, who he thought was cool, drove him back from the bar, hit on his sister, and then he like disses the guy and then apologizes for dissing him and wishes him well. And this is an example of where we really are inside of the mind of someone who's going through something here, and he's just jumping through different. So hey, Bo, the man is downstairs. He's painting. I need you to not bark through the rest of my video. Here, I'll show you. You see, he's working right in the vent, and Bo is very upset. Bo, are you okay, Bo? Are you gonna bark and interrupt the video? Oh, I think he may. We'll see. Appreciate your dogs while you have them, right? So, like, I think it's important that he's going into this specific detail and the specific memory of this guy. It's part of growing up, and he wishes this guy well. And I have like a whole litany of people in my life who I was friends with and liked, and then I had an ambiguous relationship or breakup with them, and I now wish them well, you know? Like, I was friends with this guy, Bill, who played bass with me when I was a freshman, and he like got me into a lot of jam bands and stuff, and I broke up with him because he was just too into drugs, and just like, I wish him well. I'd like to be able to write a song, be like, hey, Bill, I wish you well. I hope you're not doing drugs anymore, and I hope you're still playing bass way up high and sticking your tongue out like a weirdo. That's how I played bass. He's a good guy. And if you're a Hippo Campus fan looking for more of that traditional Hippo Campus sound, it is in here too. Like this beautiful instrumental break with the horn coming back with their great horn player. It's great. We then get to the song Where To Now, my favorite song on the album by far. This, I would say, is spiritually co-produced by New Order. Just the way that the guitars and the bass are produced, kind of drum machine sounding drums, although I imagine it's actually the drummer drumming. I'm not entirely sure. Nathan is singing on here. It's just the production all the way throughout is so good. These like beautiful surf guitars and digital feedback and just like these doubled voices. Very weird verses, all about things he thought he heard in a dream. He's talking about how crocodiles aren't green. A very catchy chorus that ends with this concept of where to now. I do think that's also a problem that Hippo Campus has. Hippo Campus, in a way, reminds me of another band, My Morning Jacket, in the way where it is bizarre that they're not more popular. It is bizarre that they are successful enough to probably not have to have a day job, but not successful enough to not constantly worry about their next album, but just be such an accomplished band with a great dedicated following that somehow isn't making it. There's a period of time, I don't listen to My Morning Jacket anymore for very weird reasons, but like there's a time where most of their lyrics seem to be about like, why aren't we bigger? I wonder if that's not what they're asking here. Like, why isn't Hippo Campus bigger? At the end of this chorus, though, there are these surf guitars that are just beautiful. There's one point where a little too many cliches on the album. That's okay. Can I get an inch or will you take a mile? And then these percussive, like synthesized bell sounds happen. It's just beautiful. It's just a great, wonderfully produced song. Seriously, I understand how their long-term fans would feel betrayed by this album. But can you really listen to this song and tell me this isn't awesome, this isn't as good as they've always been? Okay, then we get to the final song, Mojo Jojo. Now, my daughter went with us when we went to go to Raid Hour to try and get Palkios. And she's like, hey, isn't that the bad guy from Powder Puff Girls? I was like, I am the wrong person to ask. I've never watched Powder Puff Girls, except with my daughter. Turns out it is. Mojo Jojo is the name. But I wouldn't say, I'd say this is the most divisive song. This is the most controversial song. Because you know who I think this was co-produced by, spiritually? 100 Gex. It is a really hyper-pop song. Aggressively layered vocals with abstractly aggressive auto-tuning. Still great guitar work, still great drum work, but these weird obliterated harmonies, all these lyrics just all mixed up. Even the lyrics feel kind of Gexy, and like Johnny will just kick it with the knee pads, got me out, got me feeling like a flea bag. Hard pressed for a dub this time, madness, it's like a piece of mind. It does feel like a musical representation of this kind of struggle that happens in his head where he's thinking about There's these crazy sounds in the post-chorus. In the second verse, again, listen carefully. Okay, the things that you love about Hippo Campus are still there. They're underneath a whole bunch of weird Gexy madness, but these like guitar details on the second verse. Have a listen. It seems like it has an odd song structure, but then you realize it's a pop song structure. Like even the way that the bridge comes in, it feels like it's at the exact time in a pop song where it's supposed to come in. There's even some more surf guitar kind of sounds, weird bleeps and bloops, and then just ends with buzzing, like the sound of a guitar amp that's just on too loud. So there you go. Have Hippo Campus lost your mind? Yes and no. I'm gonna talk like a millennial. I'm here for it. I am here for whatever it is that they do. And I suggest you're there too, because they really are a great rock and roll band. And everyone complains about rock and roll being dead. Okay, it's not. But part of the reason that it's not is there's an actual rock and roll band doing actual rock and roll stuff like right now. So let's appreciate it. Okay, you've seen Bo. I should be able to get Toby to come here. Every time I say there's the camera and I end a video, he gets up and runs over because he knows that I might be able to pet him. So I'm gonna do a fake out ending. Let's see if I can get Toby. Okay, so for next time, there's the camera. The one time he doesn't do it. Toby! All right, fine. I'll bring you over to Toby. In honor of Cookie. Toby, where'd you go? Oh, he's got Zubot. Look at his face. Look at his face. Look at his face. Okay. Well, for Toby and Bo, there's the camera.